You
said
people
keep
think
still.
everything's a
You are
fashion
not
statement.
complying.
Let go
The
of me.
words sliced
Let go
through the
of me.
terminal like a blade through silk.
Someone needs to call
Every head
security.
turned. The
What are
sound
we
of
supposed to
clippers
do?
buzzed to life, sharp,
I
electric,
don't know, I've never seen
cruel,
anything like this.
at Gate C-17 of O'Hare International,
respond to us.
under the bright white lights and sterile calm of an afternoon check-in. A black woman sat restrained in a chair. Her posture was still, regal. Her curls, thick, beautiful, defiant, spilled over her shoulders like a crown refusing to bow.
For too long,
Behind
the
her,
truth about
a
what
flight
happened
attendant
at
in a
Rhodes
Navy
Aviation has
uniform
been
smiled
suppressed.
for the cameras.
But the records on this
Relax,
phone
she said
prove
lightly.
everything.
It's just a joke. The crowd didn't laugh. They stared, some frozen, some pretending not to see. Two uniformed ground officers held the woman's arms, not with violence, but with that quiet, procedural grip that always claims innocence later. Ma'am, the attendant added, voice dripping with a forced sweetness. We can't let you board with this presentation. Company image matters. Then she pressed the clippers to the woman's scalp. The first strand fell. The silence that followed was louder than the machine. Phones lifted, flashes blinked, and in that frozen second, power and humiliation traded places, one pretending to laugh, the other refusing to break. No one in that terminal knew that the woman in the chair wasn't just any passenger. Her name was Imani Rhodes, founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of the very airline whose uniform they wore. But in this moment, she said nothing. She let the clippers hum, eyes steady, heartbeat calm. She wanted to see how far they'd go. Think she's crying, one of the officers murmured. She's too proud to cry, the other answered. They were both wrong. Imani wasn't proud. She was calculating. Every insult, every recorded second, every face in that room was being logged somewhere. A place no one here could imagine existed. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Imani. The attendant laughed as she lifted another section of Imani's curls. You'll thank me later. Lighter for takeoff. A few passengers chuckled nervously, the kind of laugh people use to protect themselves from guilt. One young trainee at the counter whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Her supervisor shot her a warning glance. "Protocol," she muttered. Imani's reflection shimmered in the polished floor, half her hair gone, half still standing like resistance itself. And for the first time she spoke, voice low, steady. "Be careful," she said. "Some crowns grow back sharper than before." No one understood what she meant, not yet. But in less than 20 minutes, that same airline would stop flying. The first alarm came from behind the counter, a single metallic chime that didn't belong to any public system. Then another. Then a third. Within seconds, every check-in screen at Terminal C began flashing the same message. "System lockdown, executive override," passengers murmured. Phones lifted again. The supervisor's voice cracked. IT must be running maintenance." Talia shook her head. "Not during boarding. They never do this live." Imani stood in the center of the terminal, silent, still wearing the paper cap in her hand like a relic of humiliation. The flight attendant, her name tag now clearly visible, C. Whitmore, grabbed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. There's been a technical issue. We'll resume boarding shortly." But her voice trembled. The authority was gone. Imani watched her. Every syllable, every movement was now inverted. The woman who once laughed above her now scrambling beneath her own lie. A child's voice cut through the hum. "Mom, that's the lady they shaved." Heads turned again. The silence thickened. From across the hall, an airport technician rushed toward the counter, badge glinting, headset dangling from his ear. "Who triggered a lockdown?" he barked. "Corporate authorization only." Whitmore stammered, We didn't touch anything." Talia looked at Imani, realization dawning in her eyes. "Ma'am, who are you?" Imani didn't answer. She opened her phone instead. Not a call, not a text, but a secure app with the Rhodes Aviation crest. She tapped once. A notification blinked across the technician's tablet. "Command verified, I Rhodes and founder." He froze. "Wait." Whitmore saw the name and went pale. "You're joking." Imani's tone was quiet, almost kind. "No, Ms. Whitmore, you were." The supervisor stumbled over his words. You can't, this must be a mistake." Imani's gaze stayed steady. "You mistook humanity for weakness. That's your mistake. Across the terminal, phones started buzzing with push alerts. Breaking. Rhodes Aviation CEO reportedly humiliated by own staff at O'Hare. The first clips had hit social media. Someone had posted the moment the clippers touched her curls. The views were climbing by the second. Whitmore's voice quivered. This is getting out of hand. It already has, Imani replied. You taught the world what cruelty looks like in uniform. The technician whispered. Corporate security's on their way. They said they're shutting down the gate. Talia stared at her supervisor. Sir, what do we tell them? He looked lost. Tell them nothing. Imani turned slightly, her reflection in the glass wall now doubled. Half-shaved hair, half shadow, half history. This isn't about my hair, she said, her voice low but carrying through the hall. It's about how easily you all decided to take it. The sound system crackled. A new voice filled the air, firm, official, metallic. This is Rhodes Aviation Operations Control. All personnel at Gate C-17 stand by for internal review. Effective immediately, local command is suspended. Whitmore dropped the intercom. The supervisor whispered a prayer. Imani closed her phone. Outside, through the window, a line of baggage carts halted mid-runway, engines idle, lights blinking in sync with the red message still pulsing on every screen. System lockdown. Passengers began clapping, softly at first, then louder. Imani didn't smile. Justice wasn't applause. It was consequence. She turned to Talia. You'll stay, she said gently. You told the truth. Talia nodded, tears gathering. Yes, ma'am. Imani walked toward the glass doors, the paper cap still in her hand. Behind her, Whitmore called out, desperate, Please, I didn't mean... Imani didn't look back. You meant every word, she said. That's why it matters. And as the terminal lights dimmed under the flicker of corporate shutdown, one truth echoed above the chaos. The woman they tried to humiliate had just grounded their entire sky. The terminal moved on as if nothing had happened. Gate C-17 buzzed again with boarding calls, luggage wheels, and forced laughter, the kind people use to bury what they just saw. Imani Rhodes sat quietly now, her half-shaved curls hidden under a paper cap someone tossed at her to stay clean. Her white blouse, once crisp, was dusted with loose strands of her own hair. She didn't brush them away. Every piece was evidence. At the counter, the same flight attendant who had called it a joke chatted with her supervisor. We handled it, she said, smirking. Corporate wants consistency, right? Can't have passengers showing up looking unpredictable. The supervisor nodded. You did the right thing. Keep order, keep image. Imani listened. She always listened. For 15 years, she had built Rhodes Aviation from one small charter service into a national carrier. She'd spent nights in hangars, mornings in investor meetings, weekends signing union deals herself. She knew every word of their company manual, the one now being used against her like a weapon. A few feet away, a young employee named Talia, a trainee barely out of college, stood frozen behind her computer. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She's on the manifest, Talia whispered. First class, row 1A, paid in full. The supervisor turned sharply. Then erase it. Manual correction. Talia hesitated. That's falsifying data. Protocol override, he snapped. She's been removed from the flight. The cursor blinked, waiting. Talia pressed delete. Imani watched the reflection of their movements in the glass partition, every keystroke like a quiet betrayal. But her expression didn't shift. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was a countdown. Passengers moved past her, pretending not to stare. A man whispered, Is that woman okay? His wife tugged his sleeve. Don't get involved. 2 airport police officers strolled by, unconcerned. Then came the announcement. Final boarding call for Flight 612 to Atlanta. Imani stood slowly, shoulders squared. The 2 ground officers from earlier blocked her path again. Ma'am, you've been removed from the list, one said, voice flat. She handed him her boarding pass anyway. Run it again. He scanned it. The screen flashed red. Invalid. The attendant smirked from behind the counter. Told you, sweetie. It's over. Imani leaned in slightly, her tone calm, surgical. No, she said. It's just begun. A flicker of something crossed the attendant's face, and not fear, not yet, just confusion. Imani reached for her phone and sent a silent message. One word. Now. Talia glanced at her monitor. The system froze, the cursor locked mid-screen. Then a line of text appeared. Access revoked, corporate intervention. Her eyes widened. "What's happening?" she whispered. The supervisor frowned, tapping keys. "It's just a glitch." But every monitor on that row went black at once. Imani slipped the paper cap from her head, letting the uneven curls fall free. Around her, the terminal's chatter dulled to static. She looked at the same people who had laughed moments ago. "You were right," she said softly. "Company image does matter." She turned, gaze steady. "Let's see how yours looks when the world sees this." Somewhere deep in the corporate server, alarms began to trigger. And at gate C-17, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. The terminal fell into a strange quiet, the kind that hums right before thunder. Screens flickered. Boarding doors sealed with a metallic hiss. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause, as if the building itself was listening. Imani Rhodes stood beside the glass wall, watching the reflection of her own half-shaven head merge with the parked aircraft beyond the window. One side of her looked wounded, the other unbreakable. Across the counter, the supervisor paced like a trapped animal. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "We'll lose our jobs." "The board, they'll—" Imani turned slowly. "You're worried about the board now?" she asked softly. "Maybe worry about who sits at the head of it." Whitmore's voice cracked. "Please, we didn't know who you were." Imani's gaze was steady. "You didn't need to. Decency shouldn't require a resume." Passengers began whispering, phones raised, recording what was now clearly history. In the far corner, a young mother hugged her child tighter. A businessman whispered, "She's the owner." "I knew that face." Someone else murmured, "They really shaved her head. For a joke." The words echoed like guilt bouncing off marble. Imani's phone buzzed. She answered without moving. "Carla," she said quietly. Her assistant's voice came through the earpiece, calm, composed, deadly efficient. "Lockdown confirmed across 4 terminals. PR team's drafting the release. You want it public now?" "Not yet," Imani said. "I want them to hear the silence first." She looked around. Dozens of employees, stranded mid-shift, stared at their dark screens, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Whitmore finally found her courage or what was left of it. "I was following protocol," she said, trying to sound official again. "Passenger appearance must align with corporate presentation standards. It's in Section 5B. Imani tilted her head, almost curious. "You read the handbook?" "Yes." "Then you should have read who wrote it." Whitmore's lips parted, but no sound came out. A ripple of laughter, uneasy, spontaneous, passed through the crowd. Not mocking, not cruel, but cathartic. The kind that says, "Finally, someone said it." Imani lifted her chin. "You all want protocol?" she said, voice calm but resonant. "Here's a new one." Never touch another person under the pretense of professionalism. Never mistake humiliation for discipline. And never ever assume silence means surrender. The young trainee Talia whispered. "Ma'am, corporate just sent a mass email. It's titled Immediate Inquiry." Imani nodded. "Let it open." A second later, every employee phone vibrated in unison. On screen, an email banner glowed red. Subject, O'Hare Incident, Roads Oversight in Progress. The supervisor swallowed hard. "They're investigating us." Imani corrected him gently. "No, they're recording you." From outside, a low roll of thunder rumbled across the Chicago sky. Rain pressed against the glass in sharp diagonal lines, streaking her reflection until the 2 versions of her, the humiliated and the sovereign, blurred into one. Whitmore sank into a chair, face in her hands. "This was supposed to be funny," she whispered. Imani looked down at her. "Cruelty always sounds like comedy to the people telling the joke." She took a slow breath. "But I'm not laughing." Then, almost as if the storm itself responded, lightning flashed, and every emergency light in the terminal blinked red. Corporate security had arrived. 2 officers in black suits entered, scanning the crowd. The taller one spoke first. "Ms. Rhodes, headquarters confirms your authority. We're here to execute internal compliance procedures." Imani nodded once. "Begin with the staff who called it a joke." The officer turned to Whitmore and the supervisor. "You're both under review for misconduct and breach of federal aviation ethics." The crowd gasped. Phones rose higher. Imani stepped closer, her voice low but carrying through the silence. "This isn't revenge," she said. "This is restoration." The thunder outside rolled again, long and deep, and as the storm began to flood the runway, the world finally matched her calm, electric, unstoppable, righteous. The moment the corporate security officers stepped forward, the energy in Gate C-17 shifted. The chaos thinned into order. Not because anyone told them to quiet down, but because the gravity of consequence had finally arrived. Passengers who'd been whispering began to film openly. The sea of faces was no longer complicit. It was awake. Imani Rhodes stood centered between two worlds, the accused and the awakened. Behind her, rain streaked the window like falling glass. In front of her, Whitmore and the supervisor sat frozen under the weight of realization. The senior officer, badge reading M. Keller, adjusted his earpiece. "Ms. Rhodes, protocol requires an immediate statement for the record." Imani nodded once. "Make it brief." He lifted a tablet, camera blinking red. "State your involvement in this incident." Imani's tone was measured, almost detached. "I was a paying passenger assaulted under the guise of policy. The individuals involved acted with intent to humiliate. I didn't resist because I wanted to document how bias hides behind procedure." The officer hesitated. "And the company response?" Imani's gaze didn't waver. "Ongoing." He pressed the screen to stop the recording. Behind him, Whitmore broke down. "I'm sorry," she blurted out. "I didn't mean—" Imani cut her off, not unkindly. "You meant it enough to perform it," the passengers murmured again. A man in a gray coat stepped forward. "I filmed the whole thing," he said. "From the start." Imani turned to him. "Keep it, don't post it yet. Why?" "Because truth doesn't need chaos to be heard. It needs timing." The young trainee Talia still stood by her desk, trembling but resolute. She took a step forward, voice quivering but clear. "I saw everything," she said. "She didn't do anything wrong. They deleted her name from the list. I was told to erase it." Keller looked up sharply. "You can confirm that?" Talia nodded. "Yes, sir. Supervisor instructed me directly." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The supervisor's jaw clenched. "That's a lie." Imani's tone sliced through his words. "Careful. You're already on record." The officer typed something into his tablet. Statement logged. A woman near the vending machines raised her phone. "You're really her, aren't you?" "The CEO?" Imani turned slightly, neither confirming nor denying. Titles don't matter until people forget they exist. But the whisper spread anyway. "She's the owner. She's the CEO." Phones vibrated with notifications as online clips multiplied. Hashtags formed like wildfire. "Shaved for policy," in Gate C-17, Rhodes Airlines. Whitmore finally looked up, eyes wet. "Please," she said. "I've got kids. I can't lose this job." Imani's expression softened for the first time, but only slightly. "You lost it the moment you traded kindness for compliance." Keller gestured to his partner. "Escort them to the operations room." Whitmore stood on shaky legs. The supervisor followed, head bowed. As they passed, one of the passengers, the man who had filmed earlier, whispered, "That's what accountability looks like." When the doors closed behind them, the room exhaled. Imani turned to Talia. "You did the right thing." Talia's lip trembled. "I didn't want to at first. I was scared." Imani nodded. "Courage never feels safe. It feels necessary." The rain outside slowed to a steady rhythm, tapping against the glass like applause held back. Keller approached again. "Ms. Rhodes, corporate HQ is requesting a live briefing. They want to know how you want to proceed." Imani looked past him, out toward the silent plane resting on the runway. "How many passengers are stranded because of this?" "About 300, she exhaled slowly. "Then no one flies until they learn who grounded them." Keller hesitated. "You're shutting down the flight?" Imani looked at him. "No, I'm grounding a culture." He blinked, not sure if he should write that down. Behind them, the intercom flickered again. The same voice from operations earlier, now firm, reverent. "All staff, please stand by." Executive command transferring to Ms. Rhodes. The announcement hung in the air like judgment itself. Passengers began clapping again. But this time it wasn't for spectacle. It was relief. The sound of something finally set right. And for the first time since the clippers buzzed, Imani allowed herself a breath that didn't taste like steel. By the time the applause faded, the storm had reached its full voice. Sheets of rain hammered the runway. streaking across the wide glass windows in violent silver lines. Inside, the air carried that heavy metallic scent, like the moment right before a circuit breaks. Imani Rhodes stood at the center of Gate C-17, still and calm as corporate authority unraveled around her. Her silence was no longer mistaken for weakness. It had become Command Officer Keller's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, expression shifting from professionalism to disbelief. "Headquarters just issued a directive," he said. "Immediate suspension of all gate operations. Every flight under Rhodes Aviation is now under executive audit." He looked up at her. "That means the whole airline, ma'am." Imani's tone didn't change. "Good. Let them sit with the silence they built." The supervisor, pale, trembling, waiting near the wall, finally broke. "You can't do this," he said, voice rising with panic. "This will destroy us." Imani turned toward him, her voice as steady as thunder held in human form. "I didn't destroy you. You did that the moment you decided shame was policy." The words hit harder than any raised tone could. No one spoke after that. From the corner of the gate, Talia watched in awe. Her small hands gripped the counter, knuckles white. She'd never seen power look like this, silent, precise, unforgiving. Her computer beeped again. New mail, CEO Executive Recall, Boardroom Connect request. Talia gasped softly. "Ms. Rhodes, the board is requesting live confirmation. They want you to brief them." Imani took the phone from her hand, tapped the screen, and held it to her ear. "James," she said. A man's voice answered immediately. "Imani, we're all watching." News channels picked it up. "What do you want us to do?" Her eyes flicked toward the empty runway. "Ground every plane. All of them." A pause. "All of them." "Yes," she said. "If the people wearing my logo can't respect human dignity, they don't deserve the sky." The line went silent for a moment, then, "Consider it done." Across the terminal, monitors blinked again, switching from red to black to a new message in white text. "Rhodes Aviation, temporary suspension of operations pending ethical review." Passengers gasped. Some cheered. Others simply stared, realizing they were witnessing history, not scandal but correction. Whitmore, still seated beside the wall with security flanking her, began to sob quietly. "You don't understand. I was trying to follow orders." Imani turned slightly. "And did those orders tell you to humiliate someone?" Whitmore shook her head through tears. "No, but everyone does it. It's how we keep control." Imani's eyes softened, but her tone stayed sharp. "Then maybe control isn't what we need. Maybe decency is." Her phone buzzed again, Carla on the other line. "Press coverage is exploding," Carla said. "CNN, Reuters, BBC. They're calling it the O'Hare incident. Do you want to make a statement?" Imani looked around at the crowd. The officers, the trembling staff, the quiet passengers holding up their cameras like lanterns. "No," she said. "I already made one." The camera flashes caught her half-shaven profile, one side power, one side scar. It was the image of a woman who had been stripped and had chosen to rebuild in real time. Keller stepped closer. "Ms. Rhodes, headquarters request your presence at the operations suite." Imani nodded once. "Bring the staff who touched me." They began to move as a unit through the corridor, Imani at the center. Keller leading the way, rain still pounding the windows like applause from the heavens. Talia stayed behind, whispering to herself. She grounded the world in one sentence, and somewhere, across thousands of screens, millions of viewers replayed the moment a black woman stood unbroken in an airport and made the sky wait for justice. The airline wasn't falling apart. It was finally being rebuilt, one act of dignity at a time. The elevator doors slid open to a sterile corridor lined with glass offices and mirrored walls. Every reflection caught a fragment of Imani Rhodes, half crown, half scar, full authority. The hum of fluorescent lights was the only sound until Keller swiped his badge to unlock the conference suite. Inside, the temperature felt colder, not from the air, but from tension. 6 people waited at the long glass table, 3 security heads, 2 regional managers, and 1 senior VP whose name tag read A. Dempsey. Their expressions hovered between panic and denial. Imani entered without a word. Keller closed the door behind her. "Begin recording," she said. A red light blinked on the far wall camera. Dempsey tried to stand, extending a shaky hand. "Ms. Rhodes, Sit." He did. Imani's voice was low, measured, but every syllable hit like a verdict. Before we discuss damage control, let's talk about damage done. She gestured toward the flat screen mounted on the wall. Keller mirrored his tablet to the screen, grainy footage from a passenger's phone. The video began with laughter, the buzz of clippers, and the words that had ignited the storm. It's just a joke. Whitmore's face filled the frame. The room flinched. Imani let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Then quietly, "How long has this culture existed inside my airline?" No one answered. She turned to Keller. "Open the employee complaint records." He tapped. The data appeared. Hundreds of unread tickets, keywords highlighted in red. Appearance profiling. Passenger mistreatment. Racial bias. Imani stared at the wall of negligence. "You buried them." Dempsey swallowed. "We flagged them as unverified." "You know how online reports can be." She cut him off. "I know exactly what they can be. Warnings. And you ignored everyone." Her reflection flickered on the glass like a judge standing over her own empire. "I built this company so people could travel without fear," she said. "Not so fear could wear my logo." A tremor of thunder rolled above the terminal. Rain streaked down the glass again, rhythmic, relentless, as if the world outside refused to let them forget. Whitmore and the supervisor were escorted in, wrists unbound but dignity gone. They sat at the end of the table, eyes down. Imani faced them directly. "You thought it was funny. Tell me why." Whitmore's voice was barely a whisper. "We didn't think, we just followed tone." "Whose tone?" "The company's. The culture." Imani looked around the table. The same men who once praised quarterly growth, now unable to meet her eyes. "There it is," she said softly. "The quiet contagion of cruelty. No one starts it, no one stops it, and everyone hides behind policy." Carla's voice crackled through the intercom. "Board is online, ma'am. Live stream ready. Patch it through." The screen on the far wall changed again. 6 faces from corporate headquarters appeared in crisp HD. The chairman, the investors, legal counsel. Their voices came through one by one. "Imani, the footage has gone viral. We need a unified statement. This could tank market confidence." Imani listened, silent, until the last voice faded. Then she said, "Good. Let it tank anything built on silence." The boardroom fell still. Even the rain seemed to pause. She reached into her bag and placed something on the table, the paper cap they had used to cover her hair. Damp, torn, symbolic. "This," she said, "is the price of your ignorance." Her eyes locked on Dempsey. "Effective immediately, you're relieved of duty." His mouth opened to argue, but Keller stepped forward. "Order confirmed." Imani exhaled slowly. "The rest of you, consider this your first day at a different company. The one where respect is no longer optional." Lightning flashed again, washing the room in white. Whitmore looked up, trembling. "Are we at fired?" Imani met her gaze. "No, you're being retrained. Starting with humility." She turned toward the window, watching the runway lights pulse through the rain. "The world is watching how we clean our mess," she said. "So let's show them what accountability looks like when it wears a uniform." The red light on the camera kept blinking. Evidence, not spectacle. And for the first time, no one dared to look away. Gate C-17 had become a small amphitheater, rows of passengers in soft semicircles, phones held like constellations. Employees clustered at the edges, uniforms suddenly heavy on their shoulders. Rain ticked against the glass in a steady metronome. The clippers were gone, but their echo lived in the room like a stain no mop could lift. Imani Rhodes walked back to the center line on the carpet, the seam where the jet bridge met the gate. Keller flanked her left. Talia stood a pace behind, pale but unshaken. Whitmore and the supervisor waited under security's watch, eyes bright with a fear that finally understood itself. A bank of local cameras arrived, lights popping on. Reporters leaned forward, their questions loaded, voices almost reverent. Imani didn't look at them. She looked at the people who'd watched, the ones who had laughed to be safe, the ones who had looked away because that was easier. When she spoke, it wasn't loud. It was arranged. "My name is Imani Rhodes," she said, each word a clean step. "Founder. Majority shareholder. Chair of the board. She let the titles fall like keys on a table. You called me unfit for a seat on an airline I built for people who were told they didn't belong. No one exhaled. She held up the paper cap, torn, damp, small. This is what you reached for when you ran out of policy. Not safety, not procedure, humiliation. Her gaze touched Whitmore without lingering. You mistook silence for submission. That's your last mistake. The nearest camera trembled slightly in a reporter's hands. Imani turned to the passengers. If you filmed, keep it. Don't feed noise. We choose truth over frenzy. Evidence over appetite, she nodded to the man in the gray coat. You did right. Timing matters to Talia. You stay. Your integrity keeps your badge lit. To Keller. Initiate Rhodes Protocol, red line. He tapped his tablet. Overhead monitors blinked to a new banner. Ethics reset and effective now. Imani faced the employees. This company does not sell seats. It sells safety, dignity, arrival. If that makes you reach for someone's body before you reach for the handbook, you will not wear this logo. A reporter finally risked a question. Ms. Rhodes, are you shutting the airline down? She didn't blink. I'm opening it back up to its purpose, the intercom chimed. Carla's voice, precise as a scalpel, filled the gate. By order of executive command, all prior appearance-based directives are rescinded. New policy, respect before protocol. Mandatory retraining begins today. Violations trigger immediate removal. Soft applause rose, hesitant at first, then gathering. Imani did not invite it. She allowed it to exist. She stepped closer to Whitmore and the supervisor, not towering, just present. You'll enter remediation. Full pay during training, full accountability after. Understanding is cheaper than replacement, but it's paid in humility. Whitmore swallowed. Why not fire us? Imani's reply landed like a verdict and a mercy at once. Because I want you to change in the uniform you used to harm. She turned to the crowd again. To the people who watched and said nothing. I don't need your apologies. I need your future choices. A child near the window lifted a hand, not a phone. Are you okay? He asked. Imani smiled with the side of her mouth that still wore a crown. Yes, she said. Because I'm not alone. Keller's tablet pinged. He leaned in. Board confirms adoption of the ethics reset. Markets are reacting. Let them, Imani said. Anything that shakes loose didn't belong. She faced the cameras at last. No podium, no backdrop. Just glass, rain, and a runway holding its breath. Clip this part, she said. Not the shaving. This, you don't build an airline to escape the world.
You build it to carry the world better.
Then you found it. The room held still. And if anyone asks why, the planes are waiting. Tell them the sky can wait for dignity. A final chime rolled across the concourse. On the monitors, operations resume. Phased boarding pending ethics clearance. Imani lowered the paper cap into a trash bin and pressed the lid down. Gentle, final. The sound was small, but it traveled. A chapter closed. Another opened, already taxiing toward the light. By dusk, O'Hare had quieted into a kind of reverence. The last of the storm had moved east, leaving behind streets that shimmered like runways of glass. Inside, Gate C-17 was still sealed off, not as a crime scene but as a mirror. Everything reflected back. Faces, choices, consequences. Imani Rhodes stood by the wide window, her reflection framed by the bruised colors of sunset, gold and violet bleeding into steel gray. She looked composed, but beneath the surface her heartbeat matched the slow rhythmic pulse of the tarmac lights below. The storm had passed, but the air still hummed with aftermath. Keller approached with a tablet pressed to his chest. Headquarters confirms total system restoration. Flights will resume under the new compliance directive. Staff are signing acknowledgement forms as we speak. Good, Imani said softly. Now we see who learned something. Behind them, Whitmore and the supervisor were seated across from Talia in the small glass debrief room. The young trainee read from a printed sheet, the new ethics pledge. Her voice shook but didn't break. I will act with integrity. I will question prejudice disguised as policy. I will treat every passenger as if they built the plane themselves. Imani watched through the glass, her face unreadable. Let them read it aloud. Words matter more when your voice carries the weight. Carla's voice chimed through Imani's earpiece again. Press is still outside waiting for a statement. Imani exhaled. They already have one. About the staff. Carla pressed. Imani turned from the glass. Accountability isn't a headline, Carla, it's a habit. A pause of static, then Carla said quietly, "Understood." Keller glanced up from his screen. "Ms. Rhodes, the board wants to reinstate the PR division's control over crisis messaging." "No. Ma'am, it's standard procedure." Imani faced him. "Standard procedure," shaved my head and called it order. "We're done with standard." The room fell silent again. In the corner, a cleaner entered quietly to wipe down the counter where the clippers had fallen earlier. Imani watched her work, methodical, focused, invisible. When the woman looked up, their eyes met. "Thank you," Imani said. The cleaner hesitated, surprised. "Just doing my job." Imani nodded. "That's what they said too. Do it with pride, not apology." The woman smiled faintly and left the room a little brighter than she found it. Across the terminal, passengers were being rebooked. Some lingered just to witness the aftermath, to be able to say they saw a world shift right there on the tile floor of an airport. A teenage girl with braids approached the barrier rope, phone still recording. "Ms. Rhodes," she called. "My mom works here." She said thank you. Imani smiled, genuine this time. "Tell her to hold her head high, even when they try to cut it down." The crowd reacted with a quiet cheer, but Imani lifted a hand, tempering the noise. "Dignity isn't spectacle," she said, voice carrying. "It's what remains when the cameras turn off." Keller's radio crackled. Flight 612 cleared for relaunch. Imani turned toward the window. The same jet that had waited all day now rolled slowly onto the wet runway, its reflection stretching across the ground like a second chance. She watched it taxi forward, nose angled into the setting sun. Carla's voice returned, softer now. "You could have fired them all. No one would have blamed you." "I didn't build an airline to make people smaller," Imani said. "I built it to show how far we can rise." Thunder muttered one last time, faint and distant, as if the sky itself agreed. Imani took a final look at the gate where everything had broken, and everything had begun again. "Let them board," she said. "Let them learn to fly right this time." And as the engines roared to life, the glass walls of O'Hare trembled, not from fear, but from flight reclaimed. Night settled over Chicago like ink poured slow across glass. The airport, once frantic, had found a strange, weighty calm. Every loudspeaker announcement carried an undertone of caution, as if even the machines had learned respect. Imani Rhodes sat alone in the executive briefing room overlooking the tarmac. A half-empty cup of black coffee cooled beside her. Her reflection in the window merged with the city lights, the scar line of her half-shaven scalp catching the glow like polished steel. Carla's voice came softly through the intercom. "Imani, all divisions have reported in. The audit's complete. Over 400 staff recommended for ethics retraining. 35 managers suspended pending review." Imani didn't look up. "And the passengers?" "Every single one refunded. Some donated their refunds to your foundation for equity and travel." A faint smile curved Imani's mouth. "Good. Let them know I saw that." Keller entered quietly, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, the board approved your reform charter, unanimous vote. They want a statement for shareholders tomorrow." She turned in her chair. "Tell them this. A company doesn't lose value when it faces the truth. It loses value when it hides from it." He hesitated, then added, "And Whitmore?" Imani's eyes softened but didn't waver. "She starts training at 600. I want her paired with Talia." Keller blinked. "With a trainee?" "Yes," Imani said. "Let the future teach the past how to behave." Outside, the grounded fleet shimmered under floodlights. Engines still, tails bearing her name like quiet sentinels. Imani rose, pacing to the window. Her heels made soft, decisive sounds against the marble. "Do you know why I called it Rhodes Aviation, Keller?" He shook his head. "It wasn't for ownership. It was for direction. Roads connect the ground. Rhodes connects the sky." She looked at him. "I built this to lift people, not to watch them crawl." He nodded, unsure if she wanted an answer. Her phone buzzed. A notification flashed, CNN Live, the O'Hare incident. CEO speaks out. Carla's voice followed quickly. "They're replaying the footage. Half the country's watching. Social media's calling you the CEO who grounded the skies." Imani gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "Good. Maybe that'll make them look up differently." She turned back to Keller. "Open the feed." The wall screen came alive with live news. Anchors spoke over looping clips. Her calm face beneath the clippers, the moment of silence, the reset message on the monitors. But the tone had shifted. No longer scandal, but reckoning. Hashtags now read, Roads reset and dignity in flight. Carla's voice came again. Would you like to respond? Imani took a slow breath. Patch me in. The anchor blinked in surprise as her feed merged live into the broadcast. Ms. Rhodes, he said quickly, the world's watching. What do you want them to take from today? Imani's gaze met the camera lens like it was another pair of eyes she refused to look away from. I want them to see that leadership isn't loud, she said. It's accountable. I want them to know that justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it signs checks, reassigns staff, and rewrites policy. The anchor hesitated. Some say you overreacted. She leaned slightly forward. If defending dignity feels like overreaction, maybe the world's been underreacting for too long. A pause. Then silence on set. The rare kind that means the truth just landed. Imani ended the call, the screen fading to black. The room stayed quiet except for the hum of the lights. Keller finally said, that was perfect. She shook her head. Not perfect. Just overdue. Outside, a single plane lifted from the runway, engines low, cutting through the fog. The first flight since the shutdown. Keller pointed. Flight 612, the one they tried to keep you from boarding. Imani watched it climb into the clouds, its lights blinking steady like a heartbeat. Good, she murmured. Let it rise. We've earned that sky back. The rain had stopped completely now. Only reflection remained. Of a woman who had turned humiliation into blueprint and silence into verdict. Morning arrived clear and almost too calm, as if the storm had washed the entire airport clean. The glass facade of O'Hare gleamed like it had been rebuilt overnight. Sunlight poured through the windows, landing on the once chaotic Gate C-17, now quiet, almost sacred. Imani Rhodes walked across the terminal with unhurried steps. Her head was uncovered, the half-shaven side still visible, but the lines evened out, intentional now. What had begun as a mark of humiliation had become armor. Travelers turned to watch her pass. Some nodded in recognition. Others simply looked, unsure how to process reverence. Talia waited at the counter wearing her new badge. She stood taller now. Good morning, Ms. Rhodes, Imani smiled faintly. You can call me Imani today. Yes, ma'am, Imani. On the far side of the gate, Whitmore stood beside the supervisor, both dressed in plain uniforms stripped of their manager pins. They were loading baggage tags by hand under Talia's instruction. Sweat dotted their foreheads, but their focus was real. Talia guided them patiently. Keller approached with a tablet. Morning reports, ma'am. Passenger satisfaction jumped 38% overnight. Social feeds are flooded with people saying they finally trust us again. Imani nodded. Trust is a currency. Harder to earn than money, easier to spend. She turned toward the boarding area. The first passengers were already lining up for Flight 612, the same route that had started everything. There was a hush among them, the kind that only follows something historic. Let's open the gate, she said. The scanner beeped, soft and ceremonial. One by one, travelers crossed the threshold. Not rushing, but moving like participants in a ritual. A child turned back toward Imani, waved and smiled. She returned the gesture with a slow nod. Carla's voice came through the terminal speakers, calm, deliberate, proud. Rhodes Aviation thanks you for flying with us. Today marks a new chapter in our story. We rise not despite the storm, but because of it. Imani closed her eyes for a second, letting the words breathe. Then she opened them and found herself facing Whitmore. The woman's voice trembled. I wanted to say thank you for not ending my career. Imani studied her for a long beat. Don't thank me. Earn it. Whitmore nodded, eyes glistening. I will. Keller checked his watch. You're still booked on that flight, Ms. Rhodes. Row 1A, want me to board you first? Imani smiled. No, I'll board last. The sky can wait its turn. As passengers moved down the jet bridge, the light outside intensified. Planes lifted from runways in smooth arcs, their bellies flashing silver. The world was moving again, not perfectly, but consciously. Imani stepped closer to the window, her reflection overlaying the aircraft taking off. You know, she said quietly to no one in particular, I used to think power was how loud your name echoed in a room. Now I know it's how quietly you can change it. Keller tilted his head. Will you ever tell the full story? She looked at him. I don't need to. The company's telling it for me. The intercom chimed again. Final call for Flight 6112. Imani gathered her bag, her calm unbroken. As she walked down the jet bridge, her steps echoed, steady, measured, unashamed. Passengers glanced back, whispers rippling like wind. Some recognized her. Others just felt the shift in air that follows truth. Before stepping onto the plane, she paused, turned slightly toward the camera crews waiting beyond the glass, and said quietly, not to them, but to the moment itself, I don't need to go viral. I am the result. Then she crossed the threshold. Engines roared alive, a sound no longer tainted with arrogance but filled with renewal. The aircraft lifted into a sky scrubbed clean by lightning and consequence, and for the first time in 24 hours, the world didn't just watch a black woman take flight. It followed her,